Well, welcome to PACA II, and here we are again for another exciting conversation with the throws this time. And this time we are going to be having as our guest, probably in my opinion, the best all-round thrower, meaning of all four throws that the world has ever seen. In other words, Mac Wilkins is not just a discus gold medalist and world record holder, but also, and he can share with us, an outstanding shot put thrower, a standing javelin thrower, and through the hammer. There for the University of Oregon and as a professional. So, Mac, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sue. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, well, good. We appreciate it. And like I say, I do remember back when you were still competing that was one of the things always talked about was that you were very versed at all four of the disciplines. Was it
Boy,
a choice
you,
or?
looking back, I wish I had more time and more motivation to pursue all four events, at least the other three events, with a little more um, seriousness than I did the discus, or at least a little bit more than I did back then. I mean, yeah, I
Did
started out as a javelin thrower as a freshman and didn't know what the heck I was doing and blew out my elbow at the start of my sophomore year. And I think it was a few years later that Tommy John had his thing. So I was all done as a javelin thrower. Unfortunately, I didn't know how to do it, but I think that was my best event. It could have been.
Huh.
So
Okay, interesting with that. Now you went to University of Oregon
yes,
and coached at Concordia, and then you also were the throw coach down at Chula Vista, the Olympic Training Center for a while.
yes,
And
yes.
what are you doing now?
Right now, I'm still coaching. I actually started coaching when I was a sophomore in college. I would go a few blocks away from the university and coach at South Eugene High School. I was a volunteer assistant coach, and I got connected with that by Neil Steinauer,
Hmm.
shot putter, at one time indoor world record holder, and got to know Harry Johnson, who was the coach there, and he was actually the first coach at Athletics West. Got the
Mm.
thing off the ground and did a lot for my career. But so I started coaching when I was a sophomore in college, actually. So it's been 55 years.
Quite a while.
Yeah, and now actually I'm back at it, even with more vigor than the last 5 years, and going to have a new website and all that. I do remote coaching online.
Hmm.
Um, Recently moved up here to Vancouver, Washington, and the weather's a little different than San Diego area, so we'll see about live face-to-face coaching here in Vancouver. But just around the world, whoever people are interested in working with me, I love to share the
Oh, great.
experiences I have as well as the values and the big picture stuff that goes along with it.
Well, the one fact of many that I find very interesting is that you set the world record four different times in the discus. Is that right?
That's correct.
And yet three of them were all in the same meet.
Not only in the same beat, but consecutive throws, three consecutive throws. And what's impressive to me, as I would look at it, is I went in there with a plan for the first throw. Normally, I wouldn't do that with great detail, but I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And I did it, and it was a life record. And most of the time, you make one life record a year, maybe
Right.
two, but difficult, very difficult in the same competition. I said, okay, well, that's what I did. That's good. Now let's try and do this to make things a little better. And I was able to do that. And I threw another life record. And I said, okay, one more time, here's what we really need to do. And so I made the corrections and adjustments, and I was able to do what I planned on doing. And so I had three life records in a row. To me, oh, it's a world record. So what? It's a
Yeah.
life record. How can you make adjustments and corrections and improve yourself three times in a row in the competition? Um, I impressed myself on that day.
I was going to say that that's pretty outstanding. When I was reading up, I was like, that is really something, on consecutive throws and just within the same competition even. Would you say that's been your most memorable moment as an athlete, or do you have another one?
Uh, there are others. I mean, certainly winning the gold medal, that was an interesting day in my life. And there were a couple of other days where I had some incredible sensations and feelings and awareness in the discus circle. And they're memorable. I know the thing that really stuck in my mind was in Seoul, Korea in 1988, after the most of the competition, all the throwing events were finished. It was my fourth Olympics, and I was happy to be there, and finished fifth. But I was in this room. It was a big party of throwers, and Yuri Sadiq was there, and he won several gold medals and world record. And Sergei Litvinov, his buddy, who was right there over his shoulder the whole time. And there were a couple of shot putters and javelin throwers and men and women, all throwers. Some of them were 3 or 4 time Olympians who were happy if they could make the final of the Olympic Games.
Mm,
But they were there; they were the best from their country, and so they were in the Olympic Games. And at the end of the day, it didn't really matter how far you threw.
hmm
It was we all shared this common pursuit of excellence in throwing, and that was the common bond. And the common bond of sport was that the friendship was so large in terms of what matters
hmm
that that was a very very special day for me in my career, is just being with friends
hmm
of who were pursuing the same thing.
Right. Well, that's what I've found. And, throwers are a unique group, but they definitely are a very bonded group and
Yeah,
supportive of each other and, just across the board with all the events within the throwing composition. So that's great. What
yeah.
would you say does an Olympic champion or that title mean to you now?
It's opened so many doors for me, and many doors were there that I didn't open that maybe I could have or should have. Um, and once you open the door, you have to be able to perform and do what's required, whether it was um, in my earlier years as a uh, technology salesperson for corporate 100, you know,
Mhm.
businesses. Yeah. Oh, this guy was in the. Oh, that's cool. Let's see what's he like. Okay, so what do you have to offer besides that? Because I'm not talking to you more than 5 minutes if that's all you got is you were a successful athlete.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it opens the doors, but you have to have your stuff ready and you've got to be good at it when you get there. And it just the thing that I recall primarily from that day, from that experience, is the amount of focus and clarity that I had going into that competition. I mean, I'd never been in the stadium before. I'd never seen pictures of the inside of it, and you can do that now before
Mhm.
your competition. But um, I was just so clear on what it would look like when I got in the circle, what I would look like, and what it would feel like to me to make the move that I wanted to make, and that clarity, that strength of focus was um, just an amazing time period for me, and I can see the benefit of it, and how strongly I was focused in the years past. There have been times when I have not been focused, and just walking around like a zombie, and those times are horrible. Those are some of the worst times ever. But that the focus, the amount of focus that I had for that competition was, boy, I was I was living off that. That was great.
And this was in Montreal?
Yes.
And
Montreal.
so going up there, that was almost a home competition for us. But there was a lot. Did it rain the day that you threw?
No, it did not. It didn't
Okay,
rain in the
so
qualifying or 2 days later in the finals. It was a pleasant, not hot, but it was warm
uh
afternoon. So,
that yeah, because that's a being in Olympics and all that, nowadays mental health and confidence and
mhm,
visualization all
mhm.
is so important and so
Oh
talked
yeah.
about. But in 76, we didn't really talk about that. Uh,
That, yeah, there weren't doctors or people to help you do that.
right.
I think some people did it intentionally anyway, naturally, intuitively. I know I had a program for 6 weeks leading up to the games of here's how I'm going to approach my technique and my thoughts and my vision and for a lot of it was just business as normal. Every time I take a throw with the discus, that day I'd take about 5 to 10 throws in my mind without a discus. So I was just plugging away. It was the regular old program.
And is this something that you created, or did somebody help you create the
No,
pattern?
no, I just somebody may have suggested it, but it wasn't as if here's what you need to do. But it was just in my mind, it came out of my struggles to learn the technique because I remember in college, I would be under the grandstand looking at 8 millimeter film and watching it over and over again. What does it feel like to make the move like that? And what is he doing so that it's automatic? Because it doesn't look like he's going through contortions or making special efforts to do this or that. It all flows so easily and smoothly. So how do you start so that you can flow easily and smoothly through those positions? I look at it, then I get my stuff and go right out onto the field and throw and try and do it. And then sometimes I go back in and look at the films again. And in my mind, I'm trying to put together a video with cameras all over the place, including in my eyes, of what's it going to look like and what's it going to feel like to copy my technical model, who at the time was LJ Sylvester.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you as to who your role model or technical model was. Uh,
Yes.
was
Yeah,
so
LJ was my model. My coach at Oregon, Frank Morris, we got to start to work together after I gave up the javelin, and he spent a fair amount of time with LJ and got to understand very well what his technique was and what was trying to go on because Frank studied kinesiology and knew how the human body worked, and so it was a good combination of LJ and Frank, and then Frank and me, and yeah, there were some gaps in the picture and the story, and I'm trying to fill in the pieces to this jigsaw puzzle so I have a complete picture. So there are no holes.
mhm.
As I make the move, I know exactly where I want to be and what it's going to feel like, and blah blah blah. And boy, that was a lifelong endeavor.
Well, and at that time, wasn't there like two different ways of throwing? In other words, Sylvester's model and then John Powell's model, or were they similar
Not
or different?
not yet. John hadn't quite come on the scene.
Okay.
Um, but he was getting there. And yeah, at one point, I think it may have been in the late '60s, early '70s. Jay and Al Order, they had dramatically different
Yeah.
styles.
Yeah.
And but one of the key features of Jay's technique was a relatively wide right leg sweep at the back, and then a shortening type sprint type through the middle. And John um, did not make a wide sweep with his right leg. He said
Mhm.
big circle, little circle. Yeah, the right leg was bigger circle than the little circle made in the middle of the throw. But um, so there were a couple of other less important differences, but mostly it was the use of the right leg out of the back between John and Jay, and then John and me.
Mhm.
And primarily that became more clear, I think, or more of a contrast when I started to throw farther in the mid 70s.
Right.
But
Right.
um,
Have you watched Valerie Allman now or followed the her progress?
I have since she was at Stanford even.
Yeah. What would
And,
you say
and
about her technique?
I think she's got the fundamentals down. She's cleaned up a few things from when she was a sophomore in college, haven't we all? And
Right.
it's a very solid, very stable movement. I would say that her technique is like a lot of the guys' technique, and that I would look at the top throwers across the board now, and it's kind of boring. They all do the same thing. And that's a good thing because they're all very efficient mechanically. And it
Right.
wasn't that way 20, 30 years ago. There's a lot of variation, but now everybody's doing the same stuff. Um, and then there's the smaller details that may or may not make a big difference in that person's performance.
Sure.
But Valerie has real good, solid technique. I would say one thing about Valerie and also Nicholas Alekna, um, that when they reverse, they end up landing on their right foot with their heel in the direction of the throw.
Mm.
And to me, that might indicate, in theory, that would indicate a block that is not as strong as it could be. I go back to my day and my reverse, Wolfgang Schmidt's reverse, LJ Sylvester's reverse. I even saw John Powell do this one or two times, even though mostly he didn't. Is the right foot would be perpendicular to the throw.
Mm.
And I know rotational shot putters who know what they're doing try and do this, and they practice ending up with their right foot flat on the ground, perpendicular to the throw, their right ankle up against the toe board, rather than landing on the ball of the foot with the heel up in the air and going to come down or look like it's going to touch the toe board or the discus rim.
Oh.
And it's, to me, it indicates a block that could be stronger. Now, at some point, there's a give and a take between you improve this and this isn't quite as strong, maybe.
Mhm.
So I don't know. It's something for them to work on and think about if they care to. That's just my 2 cents from the peanut gallery, So
Interesting. Interesting. Well, let's go back in time. What got you into sports?
oh, it was fun. It was fun. I remember the second and third grade. I was a little guy, but I was the oldest in my family, and so I'd get home as fast as I could. And we had just a few rules. You can't go outside and play in your school clothes because those are your nice clothes, sort of, so to speak. You got to put on your play clothes, your play shoes, and then you can go out and play. And you got to be back home when it gets dark. And okay, have at it. One of the challenges always was my sister was 2 years younger and my brother was 7 years younger than I was. So when my little brother got big enough to kind of play games, the challenge was how can we make a game that's challenging enough for him and for me and my sister and some of our neighbor kids who were younger than me but older than my brother, work it all out. You don't want it to be one-sided. Everybody's going to have a chance, and yeah, that was a really fun, creative, challenging kind of thing for a little kid. So that's how I got started. And we get to play Little League baseball, and that was fun. And I didn't really get a chance to get into basketball until junior high time, and uh, that's when I got exposed to track. Was in eighth grade, and before all that, my dad was an incredible athlete,
Mm.
and really interesting is that I never felt pressured by him to do sports. Never felt pressure. It was always, can we go? Can we go? Come on, Dad. Can I? Can I? Can I? And I mean, he played 3 years in the NFL. He had offers to play in the NBA. He played semi-pro baseball. He was a scratch golfer, and all that stuff. And
That's
so
amazing.
Yeah, he was an incredibly gifted athlete. And so my first exposure to sport, really a hands-on thing, was I was his caddy, and I started out when I was in first grade. Every Saturday morning, get up and let's go. And on the back nine, there was always a par three that he let me play with his three other buddies. He'd be in a foursome all the time, business acquaintances and so on. And I got to play one hole on the back nine, and that was so cool. And I was actually turned out to be a pretty good golfer in middle school and high school.
Mm.
Um, and I think learning how to swing a golf club and relax with a golf swing is very helpful for learning how to throw the javelin and also throwing the discus. So,
We'll address that a little bit. How does that correlate?
pardon me?
I mean, how does golfing and then throwing the discus or the javelin, what's the carryover there?
Oh, the carryover is, well, to hit a golf ball, you have to have long, loose levers. And the long, loose levers are propelled by the big muscles of the body, the legs, the torso, and so on. And you've got to be relaxed and you got to be loose. And if you try hard, it's going to be a bad result. And that's just like throwing, exactly like throwing a shot, discus, javelin, or hammer. So, and when I was a kid, I threw everything. I'd throw rocks at trees, at real estate signs. I'd throw snowballs, dirt clods. I'd throw anything and everything. Throw it far, throw it for accuracy. Just throw it, throw it, throw it. So I got a very educated right arm and shoulder,
Mm.
and that's not what you necessarily need to throw shot, disc, javelin, or hammer really far. You've got to learn how to relax that and let the body propel the shoulder and the arm, like in golf. And even back then, I'd play around the golf. I'd have three or four shots that were effortless and you know right where I want them to go and really far and whatever. And that could be a whole summer of throwing the discus to try and get two or three that were like that. But
I think we
that's
find
a
that,
stereo,
yeah, staying relaxed and not trying that little bit harder when it's
right?
so effortless.
Right. You get a PR in a throwing event, and oh, that was easy. Wow, it went that far. It was easy. I'm going to really try on the next one because
There
I
you go.
didn't try on that one. It felt easy. And you try and you're 15% less in terms
Exactly.
of distance. Yeah.
What made you go to the discus and not the shot or the hammer since the javelin was out?
Yeah. Well, in high school, of course, or in middle school, I was throwing the shot. And I got to the high school and I could throw the discus. And I ran the high hurdles.
Oh,
And as a senior, a couple of workouts, I broke three or four hurdles. The coach said, I think you just go through the shot and the discus. And and this was in Beaverton, Oregon, so they had the javelin in Oregon. I picked up the javelin. Guy showed me how to hold it with a fork, a finish grip,
mhm,
and you cross over with your right leg in front and not behind, like in baseball. And that's all I knew.
mhm.
Um, but so I blew out my elbow and January of my junior year, I said, this thing's not getting better. I better focus on shot and disc and pick up the hammer so I can keep my scholarship and stay in school for 2 years and get a degree. And then I can go sell insurance and my life is over. And that's where I was. So that's how I went back to the shot and the discus and focused on them and started lifting weights. I mean, when I was a sophomore, I think I weighed 215, 210, something like that, 6'4". So not a big beefy guy. And I didn't lift weights in high school. I didn't have the opportunity. And my first year, I lifted weights as a javelin thrower. So it wasn't like I was, but anyway, it was a long process. And eventually the shot put it was okay. I was doing all right in that, but I was better in the discus. And as I got older, I finally put the shot down because it really scratches up your neck. and your neck gets dirty. And man, come on, I
We
don't
don't
want to
want
deal
you
with that.
dirty.
No, I don't want a dirty, scratched up, scarred up neck. That's not fun. And it's heavy and it's hard work.
Just because it's
So
easier to travel with.
yes, yeah, indeed, indeed it is.
That's funny, definitely. Now you said you didn't lift weights in high school. Was that a choice or
I had no choice. There
what?
were no weights. There were no weights. I think my senior year, maybe there was an exercise bar, a thin exercise bar, and maybe you could do bench press to like 80 pounds or something. There
Wow.
weren't any weights there. And so, yeah, I didn't have any opportunity to do that. And there were no like track club where you're going to get expert coaching and have facilities to
Hmm.
train in a more serious or professional manner, even if you're a kid.
So
So I didn't start till I was a freshman at Oregon.
wow,
Yeah,
that is something. That's surprising because of course nowadays it's all over the place and you have
yeah,
a strength coach and a throw coach and a running coach and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
overwhelming. What do
yeah.
you think about all the specialization and things now with the youngsters?
Well, I think that in the long run, the a bunch of things are important. One of them is the energy and the emotional desire that the athlete has for the sport. And I don't know if you can do it these days. I was really lucky. I was almost 19 years old, started at Oregon as a freshman, 18 years old, and we had our first team meeting right before school started. And the coach said, "Okay, next Monday we'll start training." Excuse me? It's just the 1st of October and we get to train now. We don't have to wait until March.
Yeah.
Holy cow. This is amazing. This is incredible. I can't wait. Only 4 more days. Um, yeah, I got a chance to do it. That was so cool. And, and it was just like, we're just starting to light the rocket fuel here at age 18. And now that you have everything set up and you're a little more mature and you've got hopefully some good direction and coaching, it'll all come together rather than you're 17, 16 years old and you're just into high school and um, you can have a day if you're a three-sport athlete, if you play soccer, basketball, and do track.
Mhm.
You've got school soccer in the fall, at least they did in Oregon, and then school basketball until February, March, and track starts in March, April, and May. But at the end of school soccer in November or so, club soccer starts up. So you're going to school basketball practice and then club soccer practice.
Ooh,
And then after basketball's over, you can potentially do track training at school. And then after that, you can have club soccer and club basketball. So you can have 3 workouts in a day if you're so inclined. And oh, and then you have to study because some
yeah,
kids study these days. I don't know if I did all that much, but anyway, it can be a real grind. And so, how do you maintain your emotional energy, your reserves, your passion?
right.
Um, and so passion is one thing that's real important. I mean, yeah, it is good to get reps early and learn the skills. Learning skills is important, but um, I don't know that so much game competition is as important early on. I just it's a tough call. Too,
Hmm.
it's really a tough call, and I think first of all, a variety of sports is really helpful at an early age if you can avoid the drowning out from the fire hose of practice and games.
Right.
I mean, all of the, I don't know the statistic, but all the top draft picks and all the people, all the college players who um, have the little bonus on their uh, attractiveness to the pro scouts are the ones who play two or three sports in high school or in college. They play more than just,
Hmm.
at some point they're playing a couple of sports,
Hmm.
track and football, for example. The ones who just do football from middle school on, not quite as attractive. There's
Yeah,
a
now
value.
it's whew. That 7-on-7 football, and then they've got summer football, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
overwhelming.
yeah.
Well, when you were at Oregon, did you think Olympics in your future,
Mm.
or did that just happen?
Yeah, that just kind of happened. I mean, I thought after I said, okay, I'm done with the javelin. I've got my junior year here is January. I got to get to work on the shot and discus seriously. Um, at the time, I was 100 and I think as a sophomore, I think I threw 172 feet as in the discus. And if I can throw 185, 180, 185 when I graduate, that'd be good. And then life's over. You go to the real world, and that's it.
Hmm.
So I had very unrealistic low expectations of what I might accomplish, but one step at a time, one day at a time, one rep, one throw. That's eventually what made the difference. And then you come up for air, and oh, that's pretty far. I, that's doing okay. So I was a senior, 1973. I won the NC2As, and I think a week later, maybe 2 weeks later, I won the U.S. Nationals, and I beat the three guys who were on the Olympic team the year before in 1972. And I said, well, I don't know how far I can throw. I don't know if I can get really, really good, but if I can just stay where I am, I might have a chance to make the Olympic team in 1976. So let's just keep doing the same thing. I know I can throw farther. I know there's a lot of mistakes in my technique, and I'm not that strong relative to the other throwers. So let's just keep working and see where it goes. But right now, if I can just tread water, I should be in the running for maybe a spot on the Olympic team. Okay, fine. That's not my focus. That's not my carrot out there. My carrot is to throw farther than I did yesterday. And I kept doing that, and kind of improved a little. And in 1976, the floodgates opened, and uh, all that work burst forth into a major um, improvement. And you break the world record in May, and well, okay, I think I'm going to make the Olympic team. And well, you know what? I might have a shot for a medal.
Hmm.
And let's see how it plays out. And going into the Olympics, I figured if I have a good performance, I could probably win. I don't have to have a great performance to win. If I have a good performance, I think I can win. If I have a so-so performance, I might not win. All I need is a pretty good performance. And I think that perspective helped take a little pressure off as well. Not everyone's going to be in that position to have that perspective, but it wasn't like, oh, that gold medal, that gold medal. Not even not even the day before the finals, the day after qualifying, I broke the Olympic record by 12 feet or something. I threw 68.24. And fun story, I was watching the throw go out there. It wasn't a real good throw. It
Hmm.
kind of made that noise and fluttered like uh, might not fly. But it was 68.24, and I stood there thinking, after warming up outside, where I took two standing throws and two full throws, which is not normal. I'd usually take a few more. And Alexander Baryshnikov, the Russian shot putter, was there. After my two full throws, he said, "Mac, do you know how far those throws are?" I said, "No." 65, 68, something? No. 70 and 72.
Ooh.
I said, okay, maybe I'm ready. I don't need more warm ups. So I throw this iron butterfly at 68.24, my first throw in qualifying, and I'm standing there watching it, and I can see it's well past, way past everything else. And I thought, that was not a great throw. I know I can do better than that, but I'm not going to get another chance to do that right now if I walk out the back of the circle. Maybe, maybe I want to foul that so I get another chance to really throw far. And I stood there. I actually stood there for a second. Nah, no problem. Let's just you know keep
Yes.
things the way they are. Let's quit while we're ahead. The goal is not to break a world record. The goal is to make the final. You made the final, so put it away because nothing counts until 2 days from now.
Well,
So
that's the thing that in qualifying round, once you reach the standard that they
yeah, you're
put
done.
out there, you can't throw again, even if you want to,
No,
or
right, right, and
or whatever.
and
So
that's what I was thinking.
yeah,
I've got this great throw in me, but uh,
save it for the real one.
yeah, yeah. 2 days later, it's a whole different world, different energy, different feeling, um, to some degree. Yeah.
Well, what preparation or what did you do between the prelims and finals then, as you remember?
Mm. I don't recall, but whatever it wasn't real strenuous. I might have done some light weightlifting, kind of like warming up for 20 minutes or something, some easy squat, bench, or snatch or something. I may have taken a few standing throws and done a few drills in the circle, but not very much.
Mhm.
Not very much. I have to go back and look at my training book to see what I did like the last 3 days before um, those 2 days because it was qualifying, I think, on Friday, finals on Sunday.
Mhm.
And so what did I do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday is kind of the question. And as time went on, I kind of felt like I'd always have a tendency to overwork.
Mm.
So I'd really have to force myself to not work, not think too much, just relax.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Ryan, you want to unmute and share your tidbit on Ryan?
Oh, sorry. His story about um the qualifying round and wanting to foul so that he could take another throw. I think Krauser said somewhat recently that uh he stopped taking throws during the qualifying because apparently now with the shoe rules, if you break the world record, they'll take your shoes from you after the qualifying round and you won't have them for the finals. And it's just funny that,
Right.
it's like, oh man, I don't want to break the world record during qualifying. And
Right,
it's a
right.
problem not a lot of people have.
No kidding. No kidding. Wow, that's interesting. What they give in one hand, they'll take away with the other foot. Um,
It's
I mean,
crazy
they
because
give
they'll
them
take
the
the
they give
shot too.
the what?
They take the shot also.
Oh, yeah.
Once you break a record, they impound the shot or the
Right,
disc or whatever, the
right.
implement. And now with these shoe rules, they take the shoe too to check it. So you're out there, I guess,
Wow,
barefooted trying to make another
wow.
throw.
Yeah, and but that's pretty crazy. So, but they let you put your foot down on the rim at the back. and
Yeah.
and and they think that they're trying to they can distinguish between, well, did they use the rim for propulsion purposes or what, they were tired and they needed a rest, or how do you tell that? That's so goofy, totally goofy. And I think there's a way to work your technique and your movement so that you don't have your heel come down, you don't have your body weight come down and your heel drop. It's a biomechanical inefficient position that causes that, similar to landing on your right foot at the front.
Hmm.
But there's a way that you can move so that actually, as you make that pivot on your, most people for left foot, your heel will be coming up and there will be a clear space between any rim and the heel or the arch. and you'll be on the ball of the foot. But hey, you know,
Yeah,
that's another story.
the Crozier shot put rule, definitely for those of you
Yeah,
who don't follow throws too much, that with the rotation. Now, do you feel the rotation shot is a better throw technically and so on to get distance?
I absolutely do. I For a while there, I thought that discus throwers would be better learning to throw glide
Mhm.
because of the confusion. I thought there were some confusing similarities between the two, but as time has gone on, I think learning a standing throw in the shot is important for shot and discus throwers. But a glide might be a better move for a javelin thrower, and a spin shot's better for a discus thrower because throwing the shot with a spin is a whip. It's a pull,
Mhm.
as the discus is, and the javelin is a linear move into a block, as the glide should be.
Mhm.
And so I think that's the pairing that I look at now. I wouldn't really, if I had a beginner, a high school or middle school thrower, and they're going to do shot and discus, I'd have them spin in both of them. I mean,
Okay.
you say, oh, I can't spin. I don't know how to spin, but I'll go through the shot. And
Mhm.
well, if you're going to go through I'll go through the discus. If you're going to throw the discus, you're going to spin. So let's spin with the shot as well.
Right, right. What
Multiple Mac, I got a question for you.
oh,
Yes,
go ahead, James.
Sorry about that. But
it's okay.
No, go ahead.
I've always wanted to ask you, what was your strength levels in your prime?
Hmm. Prime. Um, yeah, I'm guessing like from world record Olympic medal on. There were a couple years before that when I was not at that high level or throwing that far, but then from that point on, um, I always figured that if I could bench press 180 kilos, which is 396, about that, that was good enough. And maybe I should have pursued it and trying to go farther. And I was really concerned about my squat and my Olympic lifts. And the squat got to the point of, if you could squat 600, you're okay, or I was okay. And I wanted to, um, if I could snatch 140 and clean 180, that would be okay. Those were not my PRs, but that would be the level that I'd say, okay, you're good enough to throw as far as you can. You're not going to lose because you're not strong enough. So, um, and those were not like the top. I was definitely not the strongest guy out there for sure. But a funny story was in '76. Um, I was throwing the shot indoors, and early February I did something and woke up the next morning and my I don't know, clavicle where it joins in right here. It was really painful on my right hand side, and I did something. I dislocated it, or I messed it up, and I couldn't lift weights. I couldn't do bench press. I couldn't throw for sure. I couldn't throw, and I didn't start throwing again until, let's see, this is probably mid to late March. So I had maybe 5 weeks of no bench press or throwing, and then I had 5 weeks where I could pick it up and start again, and I got my bench press started at like not even 60 kilos, not even 135 pounds, but like 90 or 80 or something. I was just so tender and it was so painful, and it had to heal up. Um, so I had 5 weeks to get ready for the outdoor season, and it's the Olympic year, and I worked as hard as I dared because I didn't want to hurt this again and have another setback. So I was finally able to get back to doing leg work, and that was progressing as it should. But the upper body, I remember before Mount Sac, Like 8 days before Mount Sac, I was finally able to get to 300 pounds in the bench press. And um, yeah, I said, well, we'll see what happens. Mount Sac, I break the world record. The next week, I break the world record 3 times in a row with about a 300, 315 pound bench press. Now, I'd done much more the year before, but at that time, the most I could do was just barely over 300 pounds. So I think there's a lesson there as well. Um, the the funny thing is sometimes there were two different feelings, and I always felt the latter feeling was more important and more significant. The first feeling was going to Modesto in early May and throwing far and feeling like I can bench press a house, just unlimited strength and uh, uh, maybe feeling a little tight and pumped up, but still the discus would fly far. And then the next feeling was it's August and you're in Europe and you've been traveling around for a while and you got to cinch your belt up an extra notch or two, and everything is getting big and baggy on you, and you feel like your arms are wet spaghetti noodles, and you can still throw a PR, and you can't lift the same weight that you did in April or May. And so, I think about those comparisons, and to me, it's which one of those two are you more likely to have in a big competition? Especially since all the big competitions don't happen in Modesto and they don't happen in early May. They happen in August and September, and they're in Europe or some other part of the world that's not California. So, which feeling are you going to have in your body? Most likely, you'll have the latter, the wet spaghetti noodle arms, and you can't lift very much. And oh man, the discus feels heavy. And so, how do you find that movement, that feeling, that sensation to make that weak armed, heavy discus thing go as far or farther in the big stadium with no California atmosphere? That's what counts. That's what's important. And you got to accept that and find a way to do well with that feeling, that state.
What do you think about the discus throws in Oklahoma now? And like you say, Modesto was always very friendly, shall we say, to discus
Mm-hmm.
throwers.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I say Modesto had nothing on Ramona, Oklahoma. I've not seen a place ever like Ramona, Oklahoma. Maybe once or twice for a few minutes something was equal to that, but that's all day, every day in Ramona. And interesting, um, it's like, okay, fine, good, you threw far in Ramona, but Virgilius Elecna, the father of Miklas, who is also an Olympic champion and a world champion and threw really, really far, very, very often. He said he didn't like to do that. He said he only liked to throw in the big stadiums because that's where the big competitions are and that's the real test of how far you can throw. And I see that point. I understand that point, but I think also it's fun just to watch it go fly. I mean, I the few times I had a really good wind, um, I thought that the advantage was, yes, there were some aerodynamic advantages with the wind on the discus, but there was also a psychological advantage, a boost it gave me because you'd get in there and you just rip it and say, okay, it's really going to go far. I'm going to really try, and it wouldn't go far. And so when you have a really strong wind like that, it's almost like take the discus with two hands and just throw it up in the air and let the wind do it. Psychologically, what you're doing is you're amping down, you're turning down your effort to somewhere less than 115%, and turning things down a bit gives you a more relaxed state and lets things flow in a proper timing, manner, and rhythm, which produces a better throw, more efficient, more power transfer.
And
So
that
it's a
goes back.
psychological advantage as well as aerodynamic, in my mind.
Yeah, no, I think that's very true because then, like you say, you scale down the effort so you're not like pressing and
Yep,
then the discus
yep.
flies.
That's
So, how much of discus is strength versus the timing and the finesse? of it.
No, there's a strength involved there. There's absolutely a strength involved there, and you know, a real crude common measure is what you can do in the weight room, but there's also a throwing strength, and just because you can bench press 450 pounds doesn't mean you can throw the shot or the discus far. There's a timing and an acceleration involved that is far beyond weightlifting. And so um, yeah, it's an all around. There's a special throwing strength. I mean, how far can you throw an overweight implement?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's some discus throwers who, in the past, European throwers have thrown 4 kilo shots with a full spin and from a stand.
Mm-hmm.
More generally accepted would be from a standing throw, and I think that a lot of women throwers and their coaches feel that the backward overhead shot put throw is a prime indicator of your strength ability for throwing the discus far. Um, so those are, I mean, there's just no movement exactly like throwing the discus. There's a lot of similar kind of movements and movements that require similar muscle groups and similar timing as well. Yeah, you throw a 2.3 kilo discus if you're a guy, you're going to be working muscles, but you also have to work the rhythm and the timing and the relaxation. So you're working those muscles properly. If you're just trying to muscle the thing out there, you're not going to throw it as far, number one, and you're building bad neuromuscular patterns, and you don't want bad patterns. So
Definitely, definitely.
yeah, I couldn't put my finger on it. I think it's different for everybody. I know. Oh, if you can do this really well, you'll be a good discus thrower.
Yeah,
Can't say
yeah.
that. Can't say that.
Are there certain drills or lifts that you think are best for discus, then for shot, for javelin, for hammer, or ones that cover all of them?
Yeah, I mean, I could, in a real crude and general manner, divide the training that you do into three groups. There's the base core crude strength, which would be lifting uh, heavy weights in the weight room and working your core and doing rotational strength and all that stuff in the weight room. Then there's specific skill strength exercises like throwing throwing tires, throwing medicine balls, throwing bars, throwing a 4K shot or a 3K shot, throwing a little mini hammer that's maybe 14, 12 inches long, and those are those are really great. I love those for a sense of rhythm and the path of the implement. And they develop your throwing strength and they develop your technique. You have to both of them are impacted at the same time. And then there's just throwing the competition weight and lighter weight objects, which certainly that's technical work, but it's also if you're throwing a lighter object, you have to get a feeling for not working, not doing the hard work. You have to find a way. How do you make it go farther? You can make it go farther usually by not trying so hard. And so not trying so hard is an excellent, it's a mandatory skill to learn, in fact, how to throw far without trying hard.
Right.
And yeah,
Definitely. That's for all of them too.
absolutely. Every throwing event. So yeah, general strength, specific strength, and then primarily technical work.
Are there certain drills that you'd mentioned the overhead shot for female shot putters? Are there other drills that correlate or give you a good indication for men
Um,
and then women?
well, how far you can throw something is
Well, true, true.
for drills. I would say they're throwing the shot overhead backwards is I wouldn't call that a drill. I'd call that a special strength activity.
Okay.
And you're working on your explosive strength and trying to throw for a distance. Drills, I think what's important is the the rotational thrower needs to understand how to get on balance from left to right. Assuming you're right-handed, you've got to get your weight on your left foot and move in a straight line through the circle. And if you're a discus thrower, you have to have a good orbit to the discus. In other words, as you have your throwing arm go to the direction of the throw right before your left foot touches down at the front, the discus should be clearly up over your head. And you do those two things and you're 90% of the way there. And those are the two things that all the top throwers are doing these days. And, you know, after that, it's minor little details. And
Right.
But for drills, I think, yeah, there's some drills to help you feel how to get on balance. There's a few things that can help with the orbit of the discus, but again, it's different for every thrower, and
Sure.
the goals are the same, but you know what you do to make that change is
Way to get there is very varied.
right. Different path, indeed.
You work with young throwers now also, and then you were a college coach there for a while. What would you say is the biggest error that you see with young throwers as they go to college? Or something they need to improve most?
Well, I think it's probably the same problem that I had, the same issue that I had is at that age, you're out throwing and everybody who walks by the throwing circle is an expert and they're going to tell you what you're doing wrong and how to do it right. And sorting out the wheat from the chaff, to put it politely, was the biggest challenge I had. Does this guy really know what the hell he's talking about?
Right.
If it's true, is it something that I can do? Will it work for me? And you know, understanding the basics of the technique and the movement, especially now with YouTube and all the stuff on the internet, there's so many experts out there that kind of, some of them are completely off base, some of them are a little bit off, and they got some truth and accuracy to what they're stating. But then if they do make a correct point, they might not demonstrate it correctly. They might demonstrate it like they're a distance running coach and they've never thrown in their lives. In my mind, that completely blows it. But getting a correct picture of what you need to do and then going down that path, that was the hardest thing. After a while, I said, yeah, okay, thanks, I'll pass, you know, but it took me a while to get there. It wasn't until until I met Frank Morris as a junior in college. Before that time, I was still wondering if this person really was aware of how to throw and they were trying to lead me down a false path, not intentionally,
Right.
but you know.
Were you self-coached after college?
Pretty much. Yeah, I got to work with Frank as a junior and a senior. And my first year out of school, I was in grad school for a year. And then the next year, I was a teacher at South Eugene High School. And that year, I didn't get much time with him. I don't know if he'd gone off to coach at Arizona State, but so I got a good 3 years with Frank. And we stayed in touch over the years and kept communicating. But once again, after that, I was on my own. I was my own coach, my own manager. I was my own doctor, my own nutritionist, my own travel agent. I mean,
That's what it was back then, though.
absolutely, absolutely. I remember times out in the middle of nowhere in northern Finland, and there's two payphones in the town. And so you got to work your way through breakfast in a store and gather up as many coins as you can that you think will be enough to make the phone call. And you walk down towards the outside of town, and there's a phone booth, and you get in there and you hope you can kind of make sense out of, maybe there's some English, but usually it's in Finnish and it's all I couldn't understand it. And so I tried to figure out how to make a long distance phone call from Finland to Italy. And I had a phone number of a guy in Italy who was the director of a competition I wanted to go to. And hope he's in the office, hope he speaks English, hope somebody else there speaks English, and I hope he knows who I am, and I hope I can convince him to have him pay my way to his competition and put me up in a hotel for 3 days and maybe give me some money to compete. And I hope I got enough coins in my pocket to get that conversation completed with this payphone that I don't know how to use. And it didn't happen once. It happened quite a few times.
I was gonna say that's
And
pretty standard back in those days.
yeah, that was our education. That was our survival. We did that because we wanted to get better, and I knew that I needed money to survive, to train, and I knew that I needed competitions to get better. Competitions were like training. I'm here in Europe. I'm not here just to train and to see the sights.
Right.
I didn't do sightseeing. I'm here to compete. I'm here to train and compete and learn as much as I can. So I got to go through that payphone experience, that phone booth experience. And most of the time they spoke English and they knew who I was. And oh yeah,
I would
there's
think as
always
the Olympic champion calling in that that would be pretty easy to, but like
well,
you say, the English is the issue, definitely.
true. But this was before the Olympics. This was when I was
Oh, okay.
a 213-foot thrower. I was maybe I was in the top 10 in the world, but still, and I was national champion in 1973. So doing this in 74 and 75, there was a little bit of weight behind my name, but
Mhm.
not much.
I
So
wonder if today's athletes could even deal with those circumstances,
yeah,
traveling. I
I
don't,
don't know.
I don't
I don't
think so.
know. No, no, no. They
Home,
got to post every 3 hours. They got to put up a couple new posts on TikTok or something.
post a thing, help, I need to get into this meet in Italy.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
so. Well, what part do you believe in peaking?
Do I believe in peaking? Yes, yes, and it was always a um, conundrum, a difficult thing for me because I, of course, have tendencies to work too hard, and so am I doing the right amount? Is this too much? Am I tired? And I didn't really have much in the way of measuring my physical readiness, my central nervous system readiness to compete. Um, and but I tried to do what I thought was best, and I know that after I became successful, I always had to make a trade-off, and this is a trade-off that I can't understand how they're doing it now, but it is the same thing, only in spades, is that you want to compete as often as you can because you need as much money as you can get so that you can survive the next year till the next season. You can pay your bills so you don't have to get a job and be distracted from your incredible holy mission of throwing farther. And so yeah, okay, Wolfgang Schmidt gets to leave the East maybe for sure once, maybe twice a year, and they're not going to let him out unless he's primed and ready and at his peak. And he was my prime rival, and I know he'd be coming out and he'd be ready to go, and I'd just be, okay, we got 3 meets this week and all up and down through Europe, and but I'm going to be making good money so I can train and make it till next season. And it's a trade off. You
Mhm.
know, for me, always though, the most important competition was the national championships. And yeah, the Olympics were more important than that, but the nationals typically, I always had to be ready. I wanted to be at my very best for the U.S. national championships. And
Was there a
so,
reason for that other than that kind of set the tone for Europe?
well, it set the tone for Europe, but also I want to be American champion. I want to be champion of the United States. I'm an American.
There you go.
And pre-classic was always like 2 weeks before, and that was for me. That was always a downtime, and I always threw crummy there. I thought, and relatively speaking, and it was kind of frustrating because that's my hometown. I was born
Yeah.
there, went to school there, and I want to do well there. But timing was always such that I was not if I was going to do well 2 weeks later at the Nationals.
Hmm.
So
That's what's
it's
interesting is that you figured all of that out, as just did it based on how your body felt or how training was going as to when to back off and when to push through, so we say?
Yeah, after some experience and listening to some of my peers, um, that helped. Um, and then again, how do you feel? How do you feel right now? Okay, well, how are you going to feel in 3 weeks when you're a week out from nationals? That's the key point. How do you feel then? And I, after a while, I figured out, well, okay, if I want my peak right here at the first of the month, um, I know that even 2 weeks after that, 3 weeks after that, if I'm not able to work hard and continue fighting with the training and so on, I'll still be in really good shape, and I can still throw really far. It'll be more toward like throwing far with wet spaghetti arms, wet spaghetti noodle arms, but it's certainly possible, and yeah, I can figure that out. So don't worry about it. And maybe what I thought was my peak, maybe physically, I was really going to be in a better state 5 days, 7 days later. I don't know, maybe, but that's always it was always a crapshoot. Well, how do
Right.
you, I, I just, I know there's all kinds of scientific ways to measure that stuff these days. Didn't have it back then, so it's
Oh,
pretty much your intuition.
exactly. How did you handle nutrition? You mentioned
Oh,
athletes today have all of that. How'd you handle that while you were competing?
well, I know when I escaped from Eugene and the cold, gray, wet weather and moved to San Jose to train with everybody else there, Al Feuerbach primarily,
Mhm.
even though he was a shot putter. Um, and there were a bunch of Olympic weightlifters and a bunch of women throwers who were Olympians, and uh, Fred Samara, I think Fred Dixon and Bruce Jenner back then, they were all there training, and John Powell and Brian Oldfield, and a bunch of other people were there. And I'm getting off track of the nutrition, but I could talk about breakthrough Saturdays where there's like 15 people standing in line to throw the shot at San Jose State, and none of them go to San Jose State. They're all anyway. We'd go to the YMCA and lift weights and be finished 5 or 6 o'clock or something like that. And my favorite dinner after that was I'd go to KFC, get a big bucket of chicken. Wasn't all that bad because I'd pull the skin off and I'd just eat the meat.
There you go.
I thought, oh, well, that's healthy. And then there was a little mom and pop grocery store and get a 6 pack of Coors and a chocolate bar. And I hate to say it, but that was standard stuff. I got smarter as I got older and focused more on cleaner type foods and less processed foods. And we got to have enough carbs so we can do the work. Um, and you've got to have a high level of caloric intake.
Mhm.
In Montreal, I was trying to keep my weight up. I'd been traveling in Europe and I lost a little bit, and I don't want to get light, or I don't want to lose 10 pounds and feel like, oh, I feel really weak and light and throw everything off. So
Mhm.
I started eating a lot in the dorm where they had the team gathered before going to Montreal.
Mhm.
And at one point, I was doing 6,000 calories a day,
Wow.
and I kept my weight up,
Yeah, I bet
that's
you
for
did.
sure. But eating was always I always looked at it like it's an important part of my training.
Mhm.
And for me, it was, yeah, it's got to be good food, but it's got to be enough calories. I have to have enough. And I know I ate too much. I didn't have to eat as much as I did. I probably would have been more effective and efficient eating less food. Um, but I love to eat. I love food, but sometimes that got to be as hard as some of my workouts. I got, oh, I got to eat all this food,
Uh,
and
So the calories were the most important concept
pretty
versus
much, yeah,
anything else.
yeah.
Well,
I
tell us a
wouldn't.
little bit about San Jose State and being around that world of, like you
Oh,
say, all the trainers. Well, things that you could share, let's put it that way.
okay. Okay. So, yeah, these, uh, Al Feuerbach moved to LA, I think in 1970 to train at USC with Kolich and Murphy and some other shot putters there. And then he ran into Richard Marks, a shot putter who was living in San Jose. He said, Al, you got to come up to San Jose. It's way better up here. And well, it wasn't LA, but maybe it was better for training. And there were some Olympic lifters who were training there at the YMCA, and Richard Marks and Ron Simku showed up, and Powell lived there, Oldfield lived there, and Maren Seidler and Marilyn King and yeah, Jenner Dixon and Samara. I think Dixon was there. Anyway, there were just a bunch of people who were field event people who were throwers and multis, lived in San Jose, and sometimes they trained together, sometimes they wouldn't. I never trained with John. I trained with Brian once in a while in the shot put. We'd have breakthrough Saturdays,
Mm-hmm.
and Saturday was always a big breakthrough day on the field and in the weight room. And it's like, okay, there's some semblance of organization there. I don't know if that really is the best way to do it, but I swear to God, there'd be 15 people lined up to get in the shot circle to take a throw. And then it got to be, well, let's come out a little early, let's come out a little late. And so sometimes Brian Oldfield would come out early and he'd have a 14 and a half pound shot. He'd throw some out there and they'd be like 72, 73, or really far throws. The marks would be in the cinders, and he knew Al was coming out later and he wanted to play with his head. And um, there were Mike Weeks was there, and he was at San Jose State actually at the time initially.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob Feuerbach came out there, and I can't remember all the names.
I mean, it was like the Mecca
It was,
say
it
of
was, and
throwers
there
at
was
that
no
time.
organization, no facility. I mean, there were times when I'd go out to throw in the afternoon at 2:30, 3 o'clock, and the sprinklers would come on.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, guys, why are you watering the grass? Are you watering the grass to keep me from using the field? Or are you watering the grass to make it green? If you want to make it green and nice and healthy so I can use it, okay, I want to use it now. Water it later, like at night, okay? And there were many, many times when they had, I bet it was a 10-foot high chain link fence.
I was going to
And
say, were you jumping fences?
yeah, we weren't jumping that. We were climbing up and carefully going over the top. You don't want to catch your pants or anything else on the hooks that stick up there, you know.
Right,
And
right.
you got to slide your implements under the bottom of the fence and pull it out. And yeah, it's locked up. Sorry. So we'd kind of go out there and sneak out there and hopefully throw. And at the YMCA, sometimes I don't know what the deal was. Sometimes they'd let us in, and sometimes we had to kind of sneak in, and there was a turnstile thing and somebody behind the counter. And I mean, it's yeah, this is the National Throwing Center. No.
I was going to say, guys, the size that you all were walking in, I think the turnstile probably said, I'll go, I'll let you do whatever.
They had European friends. We'd go see them in Europe, and they say, "Oh, I'd really like to come to San Jose to see the National Training Center, where you guys train, because there's so many of you. It's got to be the National Center." No, it was all on our own too. And I don't know if you remember this, but back early on, 72, 73, 74, we had to write to the AAU, we had to write to the director, Olin Castle, and get permission to
Yeah.
compete in Europe. And this meet, and here's the meet director and his address and phone number, this meet and the date and the meet director, and
Oh, yeah.
let's send this in and hope that we get approved.
Yeah. You
May
had,
not get approved.
yeah.
Yeah, you got to get approval to go compete.
Yeah.
And of
No,
course,
it,
you couldn't have any money exchange hands at all. But
it was all under the infamous table and 3 o'clock,
Yes.
at
Yeah.
3 a.m. in the meeting
Sometimes.
director's room
Yeah. Sometimes.
with
Yeah.
that. So, what advice would you have for yourself as an 18-year-old today? Like if you could go back in time and
Mm,
give some advice
mm.
to yourself back in college, what would that be?
Yeah. I would say, oh, even before that, I'd say stick with golf, stick with baseball, be a pitcher. Um, yeah. No, I would say if I was a senior in high school, when I was a senior in high school, I didn't know if I was good enough to do sports in college. I
Hmm.
had no idea, not a clue. I got a recruiting letter from a 2-year college in Eastern Oregon, and I thought that was so cool. They wanted me to come play basketball there. And and when Bill Bowerman said we'd like you to come to Oregon and we can arrange some scholarship money for you, wait, you want me to come to Oregon? You really think I'm good enough to do this? That's not very realistic, but that was my attitude. So my advice, um, yeah, probably I worried stuff too much. I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have worried more as much, and maybe I should have. In some cases, maybe I could have taken, given myself more credit, and maybe taken a few more chances.
Oh,
Some of the things I did were kind of risky, but when it came to sport, I felt like the things I was doing were, yeah, possibly risky, but I could see a very clear and solid path to get from where I am now to where I want to be. And so this is what I'm going to do. And if it's different than what everybody else is doing, fine. I don't want to be like everyone else. I want to be different. And so I'm taking a different path to a different destination.
yeah.
And just let that happen. Go to it, man.
Now, you had mentioned at the beginning that you're doing virtual coaching or I guess
I
virtual
am.
coaching now.
Yeah,
And
I am.
I think you had told me you were getting ready to put some stuff online and things like that. How would a
Mhm.
young thrower or young coach reach you?
Well, the easiest way would be my email, mac@macwilkins.com.
So
So
just MAC at
at
macwilkins.com.
yeah, and all they have to do is know how to spell my last name.
Which,
That's one way to do it, and I'll keep everybody updated on what's going on. I also, not to compete, but I also hope to be launching a webinar similar
mm,
to this, and
okay,
I'm going to have only focus on throwing. You can cover everything for
I'll cover
USATF
everything
and
else.
continue to do this. And I'll be happy to come back when you think it's appropriate and we can talk some more. I
Okay.
like doing this kind of thing. So I'm to the point now where I have this weird feeling of, hey, I have a bunch of stuff in my attic or in my brain that I'd like to share with people. And
Mhm.
um, I see what's out there on the internet, and you're kind of there, but not really. I see what's going on in the at the top level of the discus throw and the shot put. I say, awesome guys, keep at it. That's cool. How does the next generation follow on with what you've done? And so I'm to the point where I just want to clear it all out and give it to anybody and everybody, and especially if somebody's interested and motivated to hear and to think about what I have to say, then, you know, that can be a positive thing. I mean, what I'm talking about is this is throwing has been my life's passion.
Mhm.
And so its passion is a love, and love is only of value when you can share it. So
Excellent.
I'm just
You're going to share it.
happy to share it tonight. Absolutely.
Well, I think that's the neat thing is that, we didn't do a lot on technique discussions, but just your perspective on things because, like you mentioned, you came from the golden age, if you will, of throwing, and maybe distances are further now by few people, but the depth and the overall depth of throws, I don't think was anything
Mm,
like what it was in 70s and 80s. And the fact that you had to do basically everything on your own. There were no agents going around marketing you and getting you in meets and things like that, and that you did have to figure it out. And that's what is even more amazing, I think, that you guys did such a great job with that.
well,
So
thanks.
it's definitely important. When did you retire? What year was that?
I retired right after the qualifying round of the national championships in Houston, Texas in 1989.
Right after the qualifying round?
Right. That was my last competitive effort. That was my last serious throw of my life.
Oh, wow.
Earlier, I think in June, I finally did something to my L4, L5, and I had the doctors looked at it and they said, there's really not enough there for us to work on. But
Oh,
if you keep doing this, we might be able to have something to work with. So I said, no, I think I'm good. I'm
yeah,
not close to the world record. The Olympics are 3 years away. I have a wife and a baby, and I need to get out of the candy store, get out of fantasy land, and get back to real life. At least that's what I thought.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that was the end. It was June of 1989.
yeah. Remember the fun part of what was it, Robertson Field or Robertson Stadium or something in Houston there with the humidity and
Oh,
fun part, definitely. Well,
yeah.
Dinsmore, you always have a great comment for us, Adrian, when you're finishing, as we finish up tonight, and I'm sure you've had a few comments here in the chat. Why don't you give us some thoughts here in closing of some of the things Mac has shared with us?
I actually have a question for Coach Mack.
Good.
As you were throwing, and as you were a thrower and a coach, did you or do you use different sizes and types of medicine balls as an athlete and as a coach?
Yeah, I used medicine balls primarily as a coach. It was a concept that didn't really reach my world when I was competing, but big time as a coach, you bet.
Got it. Thank you, sir.
You bet. Thank you.
Any other questions here? We've kind of haven't had a whole lot of info or feedback, I mean, questions going on. I want to be sure we address anything that any of you have. David, you're all set?
I think so. I
These
was
are our
just
regular guys here.
yeah, I was just more fascinated about uh how he was able to be good at all, well not all, but
Yeah,
several of the throws and just in different recruits and different athletes that you see. I'm always fascinated about how you're able to identify like weight and hammer just because not a lot of the high schools have it. So maybe some things that we as coaches can use to identify those
Mm.
type of athletes
Yeah,
that would be good at that.
I don't know. I think you have to have all your shot, disc, and potential hammer guys do hammer exercises in the beginning of the season. If you're thinking of recruiting somebody or finding a potential hammer thrower, the stereotype is the hammer thrower is the shot putter who's not tall enough to throw real far. But you got hammer throwers who are 6'4" and taller and long arms, and that's definitely discus size. So, not to mention shot put size. Um, yeah, I don't know. Just it's got to be. It can be an exercise that is a throwing strength kind of activity that everybody will do as part of their training, and maybe somebody uh, will pick it up better and quicker than others. And hey, I can do this pretty well. I mean, making a hammer turn, making a one-turn hammer throw is part of your discus training or shot put training. You still have to find a way to work the weight, and you have to get ahead of it and then relax and let it happen. And that's good for your core strength. Uh, and every shot put or discus thrower needs that. That I think that's what you were asking is how do you
Yes.
find them?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I just say. Just and at some point you're going to have to be real specific, I would think, and say, okay, let's all do this for 3 or 4 weeks, and we're going to spend, you know, 30 minutes 3 times a week working on these specific hammer throw, weight throw drills and exercises. And guess what? It's not close enough to the season where it's going to mess up your discus throw
Yeah.
or your shot put.
Is there my last question is, last I think it was a couple weeks ago we had Coach Revelto on and they were talking about different science that they're trying to just get different data for jumps. Is there any specific data or things that they can do to measure like the speed of the implement um, at the release and things like that?
Sure. No, biomechanical analysis?
Yes,
Hmm.
sir.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in fact, they have it to the point now where if you have 2 cell phones, you could probably get enough data to measure that release velocity. Um, what becomes uh, much more complicated and interesting is the movements and the time and the speed and the acceleration of different body parts that happen all the way from the back of the throw to make that velocity at the release point as great as it is or as less than great. Um, so you kind of have to know what to look for, but certainly you can do that. And it was an important part to me, an important part of once I got to a high level when I had that available to me. The National Federation would send a guy out, and initially it was Gideon Ariel, Dr. Ariel,
Right.
and I've known Gideon since probably 1970. Wow,
Mhm.
56 years. And
Yeah.
he was like the father of computerized biomechanical analysis, and he's still involved in it, and he can pull video off the TV screen and analyze it, and world record pole vault or whatever, and it's important, and you can compare yourself to other people who are performing at a certain level. Here's all the long jumpers, over 8 meters, whatever, and this is what they're doing on the last 3 steps, and here's where the center of gravity goes, and here's the acceleration of this body part and the deceleration of that body part, and here's the trajectory, blah blah blah, and so you can get a pattern of, well, if I do these things, if I move within this range on these different metrics, then I should be able to jump this distance,
Hmm.
and that's very helpful information, but it's not something you need to do once a week or even maybe once a month. It'd be more like every 5 to 6 weeks or so. If you have access to that kind of technology, it can be very helpful. For a but you have to understand how to translate the time at this segment is here and the time on this one is this. How do I shorten this time so I can fit in this range? Or how do I increase the time so I get into the range that I want to be in? And that's where you've got to have a coach who knows the biomechanics of the event. And here's the big picture, and here's the details of here's what you need to do. And um, at some point, that's really key. Now, there's another perspective of, okay, let's make it like a video game, and we're getting biofeedback, and we'll try and do this and this to make these numbers right. Forget about trying to jump far or throw far. Let's just see what we can do to get better numbers. And it's kind of a video game, and I think that'd be fun to do too.
Yeah, some of it, on TV now they'll have those inlays or overlays of the velocities or takeoff angles, things like that, as some of the big meets, the like nationals or I mean worlds or Olympics. But Yeah, we don't have as much back down to the grassroots as we used to, definitely.
What didn't I know Gideon hasn't done this for years and years. Wasn't Bing Yu doing that for a long time?
I was going to say Bing Yu is still involved, and the throwers over the last several years have had a throwers initiative and have put together things, and that's where the hammers come up so
Hmm.
much. So there is some data available. If you're really interested with that, as to let me know, and I'll try to find out where the contact is. But they do have that going on. And that's why the jumpers are now trying to mimic what the thrower success has
Hmm.
been
Hmm.
internationally. So, but
Yeah.
heck, thank you so very much for your time tonight. We really appreciate it, and a great historical perspective with everything too. It was excellent.
Thank.
And we're going to be on a little bit of a hiatus here for a few weeks because I'm starting Wednesday track meets, and so I get stuck
Mhm.
with that schedule. But just follow the Facebook, or if you again don't get the weekly email, let me know. DM me or whatever, and I'll get you on the mailing list so that you keep track of our schedule. And we will resume in a few weeks. So thanks again, and good luck to everybody. And we'll see you around. Thanks again, Mac. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
all the questions. Thanks to everybody here. My pleasure.